Thanks for staying with us. On this segment, we have with us the former Minister of Works and Housing, Mr. Babatunde Fashola. He'll be speaking to us about his new book, Nigerian Public Discourse. He will also be speaking on the state of the nation. You can join the conversation much later. You can call us on 081 076 41679, 090 2416 3440. You can also tweet to us at TVC Entertainment using the Your View on TVC hashtag. Welcome to the show, sir.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. It's good to have you back. After many long years. We're happy to have you back.
Good to be here.
So, we got a copy of your monograph. And I think I've almost finished it, and I think I couldn't stop it. And I think it's such a good book that I've read because I love the fact that you highlighted the key issues Nigerians talk about, and you gave your perspective. Let's start with why you thought this was necessary to have this book in the first place.
Okay, this book is hopefully meant to provoke intellectual rigor to our developmental issues and the way we talk about our country and about ourselves and all of those kind of things. Now, it started as an act of provocation itself.
Right.
About 2 years ago. I was having a conversation with some of my staff and some of my colleagues, and then a debate ensued. And somebody said, look, why don't you put this down and write? I said, I don't have the time to write. I'm busy with files and all that. I said, okay, you know what? I'll bring a recorder. You can dictate all your thoughts. I will transcribe them. And that's how it started. So we had this session after session after session, and he was kind enough to help my special assistant on legal matters, Mr. Lanre Akinshola. He transcribed my entire dictation. That was 2 years ago. So I started the editorial work, and then I lost the manuscript that I had edited. So, of course, I had the backup on the system, but without the edit. So I just left it alone until then, after I left office. And the conversation started again. I said, look, we've talked about this, and somebody said, okay, you know what? Let me do the edit for you, since you don't want to touch it again. So put together a team of people to edit it, and then they sent it back to me, and then I did the final edit. So here we are.
Right, good.
Let me quickly just say, this is an SCN's language. As you know, I read simple. I always have to interpret to simple English to comprehend things, and it took me a while. I saw that it was detailed. I used to think BRF, the governor. I always forget the SCN part, but this is like going back to school. It's a very, I call it a book that sparks critical thinking, making people question what you hear, what you're used to. Usually we'll just hear things in Nigeria and we fly with it. But reading the book, I kept thinking Nigerians should go deep into critical thinking. So was that one of your objectives, to spark the conversation amongst general Nigerians, not necessarily people in public service, or just spark that critical thinking, the power to question everything that you see? Because I like one of the lines where you use the Paraji story, I think. The football, I'm trying to remember.
India.
And the India experience. Yeah, you know, the football. Thunder Balogun story. And I have never questioned it. I have also never questioned the Okun and
the lagoon water.
In fact, I thought it would be a cost to try it.
Yes.
You know, so reading that, and I was like, is that the intention? You know, to get
you know, it's like a deja vu moment, if you like, listening to you saying that it's already provoking you to question things, and that really was the objective, and that's why I said the hope is that it will provoke intellectual rigor, it will provoke us to ask questions about things, and if you look at the much vexed issue about how many we are, for example, population. And that's a big planning
keeps
too.
Changing.
A big issue. If you look at why is it that we fix supposedly minimum wage, but we end up with paying everybody salary upgrades, and then it can be implemented, but in other countries, minimum wage works. So those are things that I think we should all interrogate. If you look at conversations about, we have housing deficit of
17 million.
awkward numbers of millions, and which country has that? So we just need to put some rigor again into all of these questions. And
I get a few more questions. Go ahead.
So, sir, of course, what everyone has said already, which for me I understood immediately, that you're trying to raise a group of, not just a particular group, but Nigerians to be, in our conversations, to be more fact-driven, credible. And, you also mentioned the fact that we tend to just lean into public sentimentalism. And for me, it was more like a charge to especially those of us who have platforms. And when we speak, are we really honest that we are brave enough to speak credibly, even when it's not what the public is expecting us to say, or even when the public is finding it hard to receive? So I just thought there was more a charge to those who have platforms. And before it would have been just TV or radio, you can go to those places, they have NBC. But now we have people with phones in their homes, and they are influencing hundreds and thousands of people in Nigeria and across. So what do you hope, someone with a phone that gets this book would learn from your book?
Well, I do hope that there will be the discernment to decide whether to push something as fact or to caution your audience to say, I can't verify this, but I heard it. And there's a very, very thin line between all of that. And it's a very important point that you take about the rule. For example, if you look at the way we have seemingly conflated our governments with our country. Yeah. So every time our government lets us down, is the country that we throw under the bus. But the country has done nothing to us. Nigeria has done nothing to us.
Totally agree.
I read, that thing you just said now, I read it in page 94. Yeah. And I was going to use it as my closing remark, but since you mentioned it,
let's go there.
Let's go there. And it made me cry when I read that part, like a tear dropped. It says, we must understand that government is different from country. We must criticize government and politicians without throwing our country under the bus. This is possible. Government will change. Politicians will come and go. But the territory of the Federal Republic of Nigeria
remains.
Will outlive us. Let us enhance the power, prestige, and good name of Nigeria for ourselves and the generations to come. Honestly, that broke my heart. Because for a second, I'm like, oh my goodness, what have I done to my nation? What are we doing to our nation? What are we doing to this territory? What am I handing over to my child based on the conversations we're seeing? So it really breaks me as a citizen that, okay, listen, we need to really be conscious of what we're doing. But let's not go ahead of ourselves because there's so much to break down. Yeah. Let me let BC have our opening statement, then take it gradually. Go ahead.
So you also harped on, the book is lovely, by the way. I studied political science in school, and like Nima rightly said, it took me back to class. Like, this kind of conversation, I'm not ready to sit down and listen and have it, But you mentioned incorrect narrative going around and how we're not able to get proper data for certain things. And you give instances of where some laws are already been moved from the federal to the government, and after a while it goes back into the federal books. And the new crop of politicians need to begin to ask these questions and, draw the line. Now, what would you suggest in regards to politicians understanding the laws that they have? The states knowing the laws, knowing their jurisdiction, how do you expect them to go about this so that we don't have conflicting interests at every point in time? And there's also another case I think we took last week in the papers where the waterways between Lagos and the federal government was under pressure. Yes, Niwa.
Excuse me.
Yes, yeah.
Now, if as some people say, that politics is a game, how many know the rules? And the rules are there, the Constitution. How many of us even read it? And when I urge people to read the Constitution, they tell me, oh, I'm not a lawyer. I said, no, it's written in very simple English.
It is.
First of all. Secondly, you don't have to memorize everything by heart, but you can read 1 page or 2 pages every morning. And you will see that there's a lot there that we're not aware of. For example, people expect that a president, look at the powers of the president, for example, that we broke down.
Powers.
Everybody said, oh, the president is all too powerful. And all presidents have been. In fact, some have said Nigerian president is the most powerful. But going through the constitution, you see that the president is mentioned about 48 or 49 times in the edition of the constitution that I used for the book before the last amendment of the constitution in 2023. And in all of those places, we seem to have conflicted the powers, his duties, and functions.
Wow.
All together and aggregated all of them as powers. He has duties, he has powers, he has functions, and none of them is without a countervailing force. Either approval of the National Assembly, confirmation of this, and subject to such other powers. So he's not that all too powerful president that we think. And then unlike the United States, where one of their vice presidents famously described himself, I believe, as a spare tire, our vice president is not a spare tire.
Wow.
The Constitution makes very clear provisions. He's chairman of the National Economic Council, which is a very, very big institution for advising the president on economic matters. The framers of that Constitution deliberately separated economic responsibilities in terms of preparation and advisory work and gave it to the vice president. He's chairman of the Boundaries Commission. He's also chairman of the National Council on Privatization, amongst other agencies that even statutes give him responsibility to assist the president. While you will see that the president is chairman of the Police Council and National Council of State and Army Council and all of those kind of things. So these are the rules that underpin how this game of politics works. And so we are not necessarily the same with other countries. I don't know how many other countries have it in their constitution, for example, that every state must have a nominee in the Federal Executive Council. And so when we're in a hurry for the president to quickly pick all of his team members, we start comparing our process with that of other countries where the president is not under obligation to pick from every state. So how many presidents come and know who is from which state? Now, what goes on in each state? There are internal arrangements there where, for example, I think I heard on your program, for example, where there was a narrative about how many ministers had come from a particular senatorial district. Those things are internal politics of each state, rotated. So if the governor comes from the east, the minister must come from west. And so all of these are things the president must fact check before he makes a nominee. I know a state where the governor decamped from our party simply because a woman was picked to represent that state.
Wow.
And they didn't want it. So these are all of the considerations that where we're understandably expecting a president to quickly announce his ministers. This is background work that is going on.
I want us now go into each of the issues, but interestingly, I just realized that you didn't mention gender. Not that you mentioned something like that in the chapters. I'm not sure you addressed anything that has to do with the gender issues we have, but either way.
Those were the frontline issues of that moment. As I told you, it was a work of provocation. I'm thinking of doing a sequel now.
We'd love that kind of sequel. Now let me start with the issue of data, and I'd like the ladies each go into which angle that interests them. Okay. I mean, one of the things that caught me is how we easily accept international data and use it as facts. 17 million children are out of school based on some statistics show that, and I've gone for multiple events. And I think you have interrogated us sometime when we were using this data and said, how do you know? On what premise were these data provided? Just for those who haven't read the book, could you help us understand the danger of sharing and recirculating improper inaccurate data, outdated data?
I hear you. There are many dangers, but the one that scares me most is that there are people who get employed and who keep a job because we have a problem.
Yes, you said that.
And the way they continue to magnify that problem is a problem that will never go away.
Oh, wow.
And so that is one danger. And then we begin to continuously look at
sir, so don't go too fast. It's on that, I always like my viewers to understand what that means. So, for example, you're saying...
For example, if they tell us, or people say, or statistics show that we have 17 million housing deficit.
Yes.
So, how do we build that? So we look like a hopeless place. That's a danger. I did a quick math. And if you divide, let us say we want to build 1 million houses. And I've heard people say you can build 1 million houses in a year.
Wow.
I am yet to see anybody do that. The oldest public housing program in the world is run in the UK. Started, I think, in 1918. So it's over a century. I've studied it extensively. It usually targets about 300,000 to 400,000 houses over every 5 or 4 years. And there is never 100% performance. So some people come and say you want to build a million houses a year. So if you just do a quick math and divide that by 365 days, you get about 2,000 something or so, if my math is correct, houses per day, from foundation to roof and finish and fittings. How is that possible? And so it's like they set us on an impossible mission. And it begins to destroy your psyche and your confidence.
As a people.
Wow.
That's a danger.
Yeah.
There are many others.
Yes. So,
And then you see, so I'm sorry, some of these things have been told to me. And you will see in the preface where I try to address it. Late Professor Chino Achebe addressed some of these problems when I was 20. And those problems haven't gone away. I was a young man, now a parent. And I'm saying, what's going to happen to the next generation if they don't think this through properly? So that's the point I just wanted to make.
So, you talked about the danger, what you most fear, the destruction of psyche. And for me, when you said that, it made all the sense. And that's why you'll be talking to a 6-year-old who will say, I want to go to America, or I'm an American. Because the psyche, through their media and everything, is to empower them, to make them feel proud of where they're from. But our psyche, a 5-year-old already knows, our messaging in Nigeria, a 5-year-old already knows it means hopeless. It means it's over. You talked about constructing the myth of $1 a day economic perspective. I like that because it spoke to me. You were talking about poverty. I have mentioned here, I grew up with very little. So I understand, conditions like that. And you try to explain to us, poverty in America is different from poverty in Nigeria. I grew up with little, but I understood it was poverty of money, not of a lot, but we had support. And a lot of us were able to launch to who we are today because of the support. So we have a culture where people would, come together in one way or the other to help you. We seem to be more selfless in that culture. The American system seems to be paycheck on paycheck. You work for what you get, and if you don't have that, it's over. And so when we talk about poverty, or we talk about, the economic situation, we need to put that into consideration. And I feel that that's something that Nigerians need to hear more of. And so that is where we talk about, I'm sorry, it's like I'm summarizing. Yes. So, and for me, it's when we're saying our local problems, we should find local solutions. That stood out for me.
Yeah. You see, I think that we're all responding to the same set of stimuli, really. And even some of our people don't know that there is homelessness in America. They see America from the movies.
Yeah.
True.
A shining light on the hill. And as I said to some of my colleagues, when we have these conversations, I think that we have valorized other people's dreams more than we have valorized our own dreams. The Nigerian dream is a big dream.
Yes.
And it's happening every day. You see so many grass to grace stories, but we don't valorize them.
Yeah.
And we are looking for other people's dreams. And perhaps those of us who have these platforms must continuously celebrate the endless possibilities of dreams coming true for Nigerians.
Do we know our dreams, sir? Can we articulate our
Well,
dreams?
people have different dreams. People want to be successful.
Yeah.
The average mother, the average father, wants a successful child, basic education, be successful, pay your check. Those dreams can happen. And there is much more room for them to happen here
Shouldn't
than
we
there.
have like a blanket dream? So, you know, also in your book, you talked about
Interesting point.
changing the mentality of the
Interesting
people.
point. Very, very
A
interesting.
blanket dream that even a child in nursery school can say, this is the Nigerian dream.
I
Wouldn't
hear
that
you.
be easier
I hear
to
you.
buy into?
Because all of
I
us
won't
want
call
the
it a
American
Nigerian
dream in
dream.
Nigeria.
I won't call it a Nigerian dream.
Okay.
I will call it the Nigerian creed.
That's serious.
You see, and it's very important. It's something I'm still visualizing, but I know that we need a Nigerian creed. A creed away from our tribes, a creed away from our faith, a creed away from our ethnicity, and a creed away from our politics.
I agree.
An identity around which all of us
We hold. We honor.
Yeah.
We're
can,
proud of.
can
Identify
really-
with, yes. It's easier.
I totally agree. And it brings me to page 14 and 15 of this book where, from what you just said,
that's
how
where
you
I'm going.
described corruption. And, you know, your emphasis was on enforcement of law and order, but then you came to financial corruption, which raises perspective for me, and you said it's undoubtedly deleterious, but the corruption of values is even more detrimental and damaging to society, which is where I've always been for a long time.
Yeah.
So arrest the thief, yes, but the culture, the permission is everywhere. You know, make it or fake it or make it, in very different slogans.
Yeah.
You know, the way we were brought up, values was what was driven.
Yeah.
The fear that my father would hear that I was involved in something would make me think not twice, 3 times before I get involved in it. But now, parents excuse and say, no, make it. You don't make them now at whatever cost. So how do we, as a nation, promote a common or promote our values where we stand, where we can speak up against something? Now, when you have money, you can excuse any misbehavior. How do we get back there? And I'm talking about institutions. We have the National Orientation Agency, and I say it all the time on this table. I don't know whether that agency works. I think it doesn't work. What else can we do besides that?
I think that's the hardest work that those of us who are of this status and age can do to breed a new generation of Nigerians, and that work must start from primary school. Somebody was talking to me yesterday about the need to collaborate with the public sector education system. They've done it successfully in their private institutions, where education is more than that the public schools are doing well, the grades are good, but what kind of children, what kind of young adults are they producing morally, ethically, and what kind of values will they become the kind of men and women we want to see in 20 years? And I think that's where the work is. And that's where I think also that the reinforcement of whatever creed that we come around. So people are talking about a national conference and all of that. I think the biggest conversation we should have is what is our national creed.
I like that.
And that encompasses our values and our dreams and something around which all of us can say, I want to be a part of this.
I'd like to stay on the corruption because that was actually on page 14 and 15, so I'm happy that you took us there. 2 key things, law and order, because she said that we're here fighting the same terms of corruption. But what we should actually be seeking is to ensure the rule of law. There has to be law, there has to be consequences for every action at every stage. And that in itself also got to me. But what's really got to me, you said to illustrate the corruption. He said, what we don't typically recognize as corruption, you now listed a few things. And number one, Nick, I read that number one, I said, I know wonder he didn't come for my book launch. He humbled you. He said, no wonder he didn't come for my book launch. I said, he must because of that. He said, number one, he said, the act of inviting a public official or a politically exposed person to a fundraising event or award ceremony with the expectation of securing the financial donation of political power. You know whether he did not show up on that day. No problem, I forgive you. But I got it. But these are supposed to be things that we normalize.
Yes.
But they are acts of corruption. Yes, please.
Sorry. I was going to say that some of us are carrying shoulder, I'm not corrupt. But when you now read some of these,
see yourself.
Straight bullet will hit you. Number two, the practice of conferring chieftaincy titles or professional fellowships on politically exposed persons who are still in office, thereby blurring the lines between professional merit and political influence.
Go. The utilization of connections, networks, or influence.
You are connected to everybody in Nigeria. If you have any problem, Nemo will sort you out.
That one I would like for him.
So let her finish that sentence.
Payment for children or worse, bypassing due process and potentially disadvantaging others. This one, it talks to me directly.
Are we not? Can I just? Are we not allowed to use what is the essence of network?
Knowing the governor, I cannot call him.
Okay, so it's just for all of us, really, and I think we're all guilty.
Yeah,
we are.
But it's for us to really reset,
Reflect.
and perhaps in the evolution of that creed, say to ourselves, what is the definition of corruption? Because as I point a finger, how many are coming back at me?
4.
Okay, so, and I think that's from where we started, it is just to provoke all ourselves. And as Mariah said, some of these things have been normalized, but are they lawful? Are they right? And what standard do we want those hypothetical children in primary school? What kind of people do we want them to be in 30 years?
Yeah.
A much better version of ourselves?
Or not.
Yeah. So let me read this. For me, the practice of paying 2 years' rent in advance by individuals who earn their salaries monthly in arrears. So it raises the question about financial sustainability and potential for exploitation. I know this is something that you tried to push.
Yeah.
And, you know, I didn't see it from the point of corruption. It's true. So if someone that earns monthly and it's stipend, and you're asking the person to pay 2 years, what are you pushing the person to do?
No, he may not even be deliberately pushing into
Yes,
anything.
I get
but when
it,
he
but-
brings the money, something must tell you that
When
this
you-
thing is not orderly. And there is no better illustration of the trauma to ourselves. Because I really believe that if we normalize rent to coincide with incomes on a monthly basis in arrears, or a significant part of this inflation, cost of living will drop. It's a self-inflicted pain.
Yes.
But let me dramatize the trauma. I don't know how many of us, and I'm sure some of us have seen those sketches in dramas where the landlord is knocking.
Yes.
And the parents are telling the child, go and tell the landlord we are not at home. That's how traumatizing
And that's how corruption starts.
that thing is. So what values are you setting for that child? So in some places, then the child will come, innocently say, my daddy said or my mommy said I should tell you that they are not at home. You've confused the child.
Yes.
So where does the truth lie? And it is a self-inflicted. They will pay. And you see, there's a history behind this. So it never used to be like this.
Yes.
Okay.
Some people used to take accommodation default, and for the landlord, and you must see there are two sides to it. Who sees the house as a source of income is now kept out of pocket. He then has to go to court, and he stays for an inordinate time there, and he's unable to pay his own bills. So some people devise the measure to say, okay, well, if I can't get it, let me get it in advance. And I know that when it's court time, so it's like the proverbial saying that when the bird learns to fly without perching, the hunter must learn to shoot without missing. So, but it's hurt us in many more ways than we probably have accounted for.
We'll have to go to State of the Nation very soon, but I'd like us to wrap up on this book very quickly. Go ahead.
Something happened recently where you talked about your experience with the military officer and how you arrested him, and you admonished him, explained to him that his conduct in uniform was most deleterious again, because all the paraphernalia of the state has been deployed towards an unlawful purpose. Recently, Governor Sanwo-Olu arrested a young man, and while he was being, dragged to the car, he said, I'm a soldier, Oga. And, the narratives started from left, right, where soldiers felt it wasn't proper and all of that. How would you say, that example you set then, how did you feel knowing that it didn't stop that abuse that was happening? Or how do you want to address this particular one?
Well, bad behavior becomes habitual if, as we say, there are no consequences for it. And good behavior must also be rewarded in order to make it sustainable. But I think that the Chief of Army Staff has set the matter in the right context, that the Nigerian Army is an institution of laws and order. And let us just leave it there. And I'm sure that they will do what is needful in the circumstances. But what you see across is an increasing number of people in military, police, on all types of commercially operated vehicles, somewhat acting in a way that is contrary to law and order. And they are the people who should be the ones enforcing the law. So there's a need to commonly educate ourselves that this is your core mandate. So if you wear the symbol of the authority of the state to do something that is against the law, you have really hobbled all of us. It is bad enough to do it in mufti. It is bad enough. To now wear the symbol of the authority of the state. You are saying the state begins to break its own laws. That's a very bad place to be.
Okay, we have to be caught in mufti, and then you now open your mouth and say, I'm a soldier. Hiding your face.
So we're going to be wrapping up very soon on the book, because I know we'd like to hear your thoughts on some serious State of the Nation. However, there were two other areas I wanted you to touch on before we wrap up. On the issue of, I think, is the national anthem, and then the INEC versus the Associated Press in the US, the mentality of how we don't realize the capacity of INEC, the real work INEC is doing, not just Nigeria, but across. I'd like you to touch on that very quickly before I go to the national anthem issue.
Well, I think there are many sides to it, but the exciting part for me will be that, first, where is our culture of competition? So every time we lose, the umpire is bad. But this is a much respected umpire in other jurisdictions. And I've given instances of places where INEC is doing phenomenal work, credible work, helping other electoral commissions across Africa. And their work is valued. But we have, every time we want the chairman to be changed, we want this to be changed. But the jurisprudence around elections, first of all, is also something all of us must understand. It's not a perfect undertaking anywhere in the world. There are cases, and people perhaps don't have the opportunity or don't focus their attention. So until we saw the January 6th uprising in the US, people didn't know that election results were not collated and declared until weeks after the presidential election in the US, and that there is no INEC. Each state conducts its own election. And then all of this is collated. But people are now the wiser. So it's the Associated Press that declares the result. And the parties have learned to accept it. And perhaps someday we will get there. So,
okay, let me just read the last paragraph and we'll move on concerning the national anthem. So from this chapter, he was challenging why national anthem is being read, is being sung everywhere, in every event you go to. They feel that they must do opening prayer and all the protocols observed and stuff like that. So after all the conversation you had, let me end with this. It says, traditionally, international sporting events will qualify. Official state visits by sovereign should qualify for the national anthem. However, businesses, meetings, conferences, seminars where state governors and their deputies are participating should not qualify. I hope people can listen to that, because we sing national anthem.
Why don't you just say something about the census
behind it?
Yeah, the anthem is the expression of our sovereign power. And in all the places that I have been, and I've traveled quite a bit, we go to meetings, there's no opening prayer. We just get there. Even I've been to Israel, we go to meetings, there's no prayer. I've been to Saudi, we don't pray. We get on with the business. And they don't sing national anthem. So that got me thinking. And I realized that we were just doing something funny. The places where you hear national anthems, football matches, state visits by presidents, sovereign, Olympics, where medals are being presented, and a few other. So I think that the National Assembly has a responsibility here to pass a law to then say these are the places where you can read, because it just makes a mockery of
meaning.
Perhaps
we sing it so much that we don't even internalize it. We don't understand what it means.
Yes, I am thinking we're not singing it enough.
No, we are over singing it. Sorry.
Where you are, maybe where she is, they don't sing it.
I feel like we are not singing.
I've been at events where, so there was an event where we were, and the vice president was attending. It was a birthday. He came in his private capacity in relation with the person, and they were playing. I said, stop. He's not here for a state function. And the vice president said, oh, thank you, Tunde. So governors are not sovereign, so why should you be playing? And every time I go to a plane, I say, stop. Don't play national anthem for me.
Yeah, what I would suggest to that is maybe we should look for the Igbo, Yoruba, Hausa versions of it and add to that.
Plenty languages, something like
I know.
It's a thought, but let the National Assembly guide us.
Community, find the language there and try and so that it will have more meaning.
Okay. I need to wrap up.
I wanted you to quickly talk about the census. You in the book, you were mentioning the projection that you're waiting for the outcome of the 2023 housing and population census. We are in 2024. I don't even know whether it will hold. How does it make you feel knowing that we're not planning that data as, you know, that will help us break all these statistics show examples that
Well, it might be helpful to invite the chairman of the National Population Commission to share with Nigerians. They've done a lot of work. A lot of work. I think they have data on all the houses in Nigeria, for example. There's some other work to be done. But timing is going to be very, very important in how they do it and how all of us cooperate with them so that we get the full value of this exercise. However long it takes, it doesn't matter anymore. It's what is the value of what is produced. What we did in 2006 was skewed for political and other base considerations. As you will see, we challenged the results in Lagos. And the census tribunal, people don't realize that there was a census tribunal. We challenged results and the tribunal validated our challenge, which meant that the outcomes were not accurate. And so all of the figures around which we have been planning are inaccurate figures.
Yes.
So there's a big opportunity here to do something really good for the country.
All right, let me go on a quick commercial break. When we come back, we'll find out what you've been up to since you left office. And if you're babysitting or you're traveling, stay with us. We'll be right back.
Stay tuned. Your View will be right back.
Every weekday on Business Nigeria, we uncover the secrets of the financial world,
breaking down intricate economic and financial matters.
We analyze the stock market, shares, bonds, and the thrilling world of cryptocurrencies.
We unveil and analyze complex policies of the CBN and other government parastatals as they affect your everyday life, keeping you a step ahead every time.
Okay, this is the Facts matter. Our team dives deep to separate fact from popular opinion.
We simplify complex government policies as it impacts your everyday life. helping you navigate the ever-changing financial landscape.
Watch Business Nigeria every weekday at 2 p.m. only on TVC News. First with breaking news.
Thanks for staying with us. We still have our guest, Mr. Babatunde Raji Fashola. You know, you've been out of office and you have a friend who's governor of Lagos State, so we are used to calling his own name, not yours.
Yes.
But you were in office for over 2 decades, over 24 years, and you've left office, and you said people expected you to run again somehow, or to just stick around in this administration to be his minister or something. The president needs you. In your own perspective, what has been happening to you since you left office? And how would you see, are you impacting in any way in this administration, or you're just staying back and minding your business?
Drinking water and minding your business.
So, I have been resting, sleep more, eat more, and spend some time to really relish the food instead of eating in a hurry. running off. And as you can see, I put on some weight.
Yes.
Even if I say so.
You can see.
Now I'm trying to walk that down. But otherwise, I've been good and spending time at home. So Christmas was good. Saw a couple of family members. So I've been absent for a bit, and you will see that even the dedication in that book is to family. Because they bore the brunt of my absence. So, but in terms of public issues, I'm doing what I need to do, making observations and suggestions where they are necessary, giving support. You see, in some places I've done some conversations with some subnational governments, sharing experiences, and it's a new challenge, of course, but most of the time, on a scale of 1 to 10, I spend 8 out of that.
Family.
Yes.
Focus on family.
So me, I want to know, because my curiosity was aroused when the young man Namdi Bezim did an article that you wrote a petition to the IG at the time, and I've not seen you since that time. So please, kindly address how the events, what led to the events, and how it turned out eventually.
Oh, okay. I think it started first with a story at the time that the political temperature was rather elevated, and also at the time that there were pending cases, petitions, post-election in court, and somebody started sending messages on X that I was involved in writing a judgment. And I thought that was crazy and scandalous. And the Supreme Court was also then facing some scrutiny. And I thought this is a very, very serious and dangerous allegation. The third arm of our government, on the one hand, the basis of our democracy, on the other hand, and even in undemocratic times, that was the place to go. And some people were thinking that this was something to just toy with. It was almost a treasonable act to suggest that somebody who is not a member of that institution was helping them to write a judgment. So it started for a few days, and I was still thinking what to do. Then I was at a social event. The next thing was breaking news. My house had been surrounded by soldiers in order to protect me, to ensure that I finished the job. And I said, this is a joke gone too far. This is a threat to the nation itself. And the first thing to do was to report it to law enforcement. And those were the circumstances. Yeah. So I got my team to investigate where the messaging was coming from. So we tracked the locations of the subscribers to the mobile devices that they were using. And on the basis of that, my lawyers then sent a petition to law.
Let me jump in here.
But it was a very, 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 very dangerous thing to play with.
I was expecting the prosecution or...
Yeah, the law enforcement is in charge now. My lawyers are in I think there have been one or so, I'm not sure now, court appearances. Yeah. And I think that the fellow involved has probably been admitted to bail. So
yes, sir.
He will have his day in court, I believe.
Okay, sir. So, you just told us of the rest you're getting, since you left office. But as you're aware, the administration in which we're part of has come under a lot of criticism since this administration came in for performance, it's been criticized for corruption. Have you heard these criticisms, and what are your opinions on the things that, the criticisms that you hear flying around?
Well, it's not unusual to criticize the last team. It's almost part of the political culture here, so you get used to it. Let me tell you a joke, and perhaps it will help. No, it's not a joke, it's a story, but perhaps it will help dimension stuff. So, one of my colleagues called to express concern about some criticism of our tenure. And I said, okay, so who is complaining? Have you heard President Tinubu complain? Said no. I said, have you heard Vice President Shettima complain? Said no. I said, okay, so far, so good. Do you remember in the previous tenure when we took over, when some of us were criticizing A and B, what was the President Buhari and Jonathan was doing? They were having lunch together.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, I hear you. Mind your business.
Yeah. So, very busy.
So, let me ask you, you've spent about 24 years in active service.
21 years.
21 years active service. And, sometimes you may cast your mind back to some of the things you went through in discharging your duties. Do you have any regrets? Is there anything you wish, or if given another chance, you would implement differently than how you did it initially?
It's not necessarily, it's not normal for me to look back with regret, because I think I've run my races as hard as I could. So I take the view that anything that wasn't possible was not meant to be. Mm-hmm. So I gave it every shot that I could. So some things, and this is the truism of life. I was telling my staff this morning when we were coming that we were on the Third Mainland Bridge, and I said the concept of the Third Mainland Bridge started during Gowon's administration, when Awolowo was financing. And he said, what? I said Babangida finished it.
Yeah.
So, and that spanned many administrations. So there are things that you start and that you don't finish.
Others finish.
But the important thing is, what did you do with the time and the resources that you had? Did you give it your best shot?
Because of time, I would like you to, because there are a few things the important things I'd like you to touch on before you go. Time is running out very quickly. Recently, Beta Edu was suspended from office because of what happened. Many of us read the papers. Many have argued that what happened is not really over the top, because it happens in the ministry where you can request for advancement, we give into a private account because you're trying to get things done faster, quicker. Others are saying, no,
I think that is on the list.
Sorry?
It's on that list.
Yeah, I know, it's on that list. What are your own views on it? Because others are saying, please let her go back to her work. I mean, it's on, yes, she made a mistake, she's young, she's vibrant. I mean, we know that it could have been an error that she made, that she wasn't intentional. What are your own personal views on this Beta Gate?
I don't have any personal views, because I don't have the facts. So, some of what is coming out may not be factual. It is a matter under investigation, as you have reported, and I think that we should leave it at that. Let the process do its work. Interposing personal views in any event raises the question. I won't express a view if I don't have the facts, and even if I did, I might still decline to interpose a view, because when we say that we want Nigeria to have strong institutions, those institutions exist. Do we allow them to do their work without all of the pressure?
To function.
So investigations are not a switch, because it's a process, and that has to happen. Reports, outcomes have to be presented. Opinions then have to be made on the basis of facts that have been extracted. Advisory is then given to the appropriate authority on what the next steps should be. So let's wait.
Ew.
So Nigerians are not so patient. If you see the popular opinion when it comes to things like this, and we don't have a trust for these institutions, especially the security agencies, as much as you would like. We have this mob action mentality, catch an anna, kill them now. Nobody has time to wait and see due process through. How do we shift mindsets? Because you talked about how this affects nation, and you wrote a petition when somebody did that. But a lot of people believed it. They jumped on it. How do we shift this mindset and tell people court processes take a while? I have a case that I've been doing. It's 2 years now. We've been required by the court to put on notice the other party continuously because the court wants to fulfill before all righteousness before we are ahead. And I'm trying to explain to the person, I did not know that you'll be slow like this. You know, how do we get people to understand this?
You know, because I used to work in court, trying and defending cases, I understand somewhat how this can feel. And therefore, we must respect the process. Let us remember that the Constitution we all subscribe to guarantees a presumption of innocence. We must not take that away. There's a presumption of innocence. And the reason that is important, there's a movie called When They See Us.
Yeah, Netflix.
Called When They See Us.
Yeah, and you watch films, sir?
He's home now. You're not watching movies now.
No, I used to watch Netflix even whilst I was working, but I just used to pay because I would watch it late into the night. But it dramatizes the importance of the presumption of innocence and a fair trial. Young men taken in their prime, convicted for an offense.
African American story,
African American story. Based on prejudices. So we must be careful.
All right.
And I say nothing in support or against. Let us just allow the process to work. And I say no more.
Okay. How do you feel about, governor being, 9 years since being governor of the state? How do you feel about Lagos State as it is today? Do you have any advice? Are there any comment? Are you proud of some things? Are there any criticisms?
I won't offer advice about how the state is run on TV. I have access to the governor, and from time to time we talk.
Does he still pick your calls?
Of course.
Just joking.
Murayo.
No, you see, you're no more in government. Now, people say, once you're no more in government, they will abandon you. So, politicians will not call you, will not pick your calls again once you're out of government. But I'm happy that you still have it.
So, what do you think of the state that you left behind?
No, I said I wouldn't express any comments. The state is a work in progress, and the team are doing their level best to keep things going. And they are also undertaking some challenging projects and programs and policies. Our responsibility to continue to support them. That's our responsibility. If it gets better,
let me attach something to that.
Benefit.
What do you think of the President Tinubu's administration so far? The decisions he's made, what's going on right now, the policies that we're hearing and seeing. In your view, what's 2024 looking like? What do you think?
Well, again, I think that what we must understand, and this is important, and maybe that's part of the next work, people are expectant for results. But I tell people that, look, one of the things that happens in our democracy is that transition takes place in the middle of the year. In the middle of the year. So a new government comes in, usually state and federal, when the budget is halfway done. To run a budget you did not prepare. To bring in team members, some of whom had never worked in government, I must learn the culture of government. So one of the first things that happened to me when I was chief of staff to Governor Tinubu was that I saw letters, I saw files, I knew what to do, but I didn't know how to get it to Morayo. Because Morayo had an acronym. So I must learn, so I used to write it and memorize it. My palm sec would sit next to me. Minutes to MOE. I say, which one is that? It says Ministry of Environment. Minutes to HCF. I say, which one is that? Honorable Commissioner for Finance. So I learned all of that. There's a language there and it has to be learned. So all of that is going on. And there's always a distance, as I say, between policies, programs, and results. There's always a distance.
So I've seen that you retired, yes, but I also saw that you handled the training for the executive, newly appointed members of the executive in Lagos State recently, where they had a 2-day training and all of that. Have you retired into consultancy, mentorship, teaching? What exactly is it like?
No, I've retired into retirement.
Into rest.
But you know, it's an honor, really, to be invited from time to time, not to teach, but just to share experiences and also learn, because government, whether we like it or not, and governance has changed. It changed between the time Ashwaji was governor in 1999 to when I became governor in 2007. To when Ambode became governor in 2015, to when, so it continues to change. So those are also things to learn for me. It helps me to keep a currency of what's going on. Just as the president has continued, presidency has also continued to evolve from 1990 to today. So it's an honor to be in that space from time to time and to share my experience and also to learn theirs.
Okay. Do you keep in touch with the former president, the Muhammad Buhari?
I went to visit him in Daura.
Really?
Yes.
How many days did you spend?
What do you talk about after governance when you meet?
So old men, just
no.
You cannot put him in the same.
He's an old. Can't you see the gray hair?
I went to visit him in Daura, and in fact, the same day I went to see him, I also saw President Tinubu in the evening. So, and he's good. He's farming, he exercises, and he gave me a good lunch.
How are his cows?
Well, I didn't go to the farm. I went to the house.
So we have...
On the day I went, I think that was market day in Dara. I think that was a Tuesday or so. So he says on market days, he doesn't go to the farm, so that all of his people can go and sell and trade and go and do their work.
Fantastic. Yeah, so we have some comments on social media. BioCoo01 says, good morning all. I'm happy to see our BRF vibrant and relaxed, having taken some time out of public service. I can tell you that public service is very challenging in Nigeria. I pray that the Almighty guide our leaders right. Great work you guys are doing. I think I missed this, but Bilkis was saying something about your book. It would be good to hand that over to students, you know, so that they can read. I thought too.
They're going to do a book launch.
There will be on the 8th of February, I believe.
Oh, nice.
8th of February.
Politically exposed people are not expected there.
Well, they come at their own peril.
So you have it there, and there'll be no national anthem.
Well, we'll see how that goes.
See how you collect money. They won't give you money for this your book.
But this is not about. This is not necessarily about making money. It's about, as I said, provoking intellectual rigor to serious developmental issues.
So I know that you always talk about Alhaji Femi Okuno a lot. How is he? Is he well now?
Alhaji is fine. Right? I'm going to see him soon enough. he wrote the foreword. He was kind enough to, I put a lot of pressure on him. And so we had hoped that this would have been ready in the month of independence. That was what we planned. So that at the time when we were focused on independence and our development, these conversations should have been ignited. But I'm indebted to him in many ways, not the least for all of his support and advice. When I was Minister of Works, I remained conscious that I sat in his chair because he was then Federal Commissioner for Works and Housing, which is what we call Minister today. So from time to time, he shared material with me. I'm thankful. He also called me, "You are not on tour." Babatunde, Bositako Losito. And all of that. So,
because of time, let me just find out your...
And let me say this. The Lagos-Ibadan Expressway was awarded and built during his time. I think it never finished before he left. But one of the things he did was to save that median. I think then it was about 50 yards in the middle then. And whilst his colleagues were saying that median was too big, he emphasized that he was saving it almost as a land bank for future expansion of the road long after they had left. And that has afforded us the opportunity to add that additional lane today.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
And Nigeria stands in his debt. Nigeria stands in his debt, and all those who use that road for it.
We have plenty of questions I want to get to you, so let me jump in.
Biko, just for the future, is there any plan somewhere around that you have to probably get into governance again? If the
Pata be president.
comes?
Just ask the question. Do you want to become president?
I did not say that.
Would you like governance?
Anyhow, the governance comes.
There's no plan anywhere.
So would you like...
There's no plan anywhere.
So, you know, we only have like 3-4 minutes, so I'm trying to rush in so many things.
Okay, when I saw that Wole Soyinka, you know, in your introduction, I was like, when I saw it, I was like, would we be able to read this book? You know, the English. So how did he, what was his own contribution to the book?
This was my first literary adventure. And I thought, around the time after I left office, he called to say, look, I need to see you to discuss something. And I said, oh, by the way, I need you also to do something for me. And he said, what was this? So when we met over lunch and we finished, I said, look, I've just tried my hands out at book writing where you are a very seasoned practitioner. Will you just please read and criticize? So he said, why not? So I emailed it to him. He read it and he called me after to say, look, there are 1 or 2 line mines here. Be careful so that you don't fall into the same criticism and that you are making of. And that was very helpful.
Let me ask the final question so that then we can wrap up. This new slang, saying no grief for anybody, what are your thoughts on it? Everybody's saying there's no grief for anybody.
Well, I have no thoughts. I heard about it yesterday. I have no detail on it. So I can't. I saw.
There's a slang says no grief for anybody. How do you feel about it?
Calm down.
Because you're asking me political questions.
I don't know where it originated from, and I don't know what the context is. But I saw, where was I? I was at some place yesterday afternoon. I was on my way. I stopped by to pay a condolence visit. That's what happened. So I saw the first PRO saying something about no grief, and so that was all so unfortunately I didn't watch the morning shows before I came here. So I don't know what the context is, so I can't comment.
Okay, so all that language is just say you cannot comment.
No. Yes, now.
We have to wrap up. We run out of time.
How can they get the book? Because
it's not a launch. It's launched in February. So after that,
there's a launch on February 8th, but there is also an opportunity to pre-order. So, and that's on Instagram and Twitter. You can find that if you go to the site of the publishers, Kuramo.
Kuramo. Because there's always this here that he wants the book. I don't care how much it is. Please, where can I get it?
Thank you very much, sir, for coming. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
Round of show. But let me just end with this quote from Mr. Raji Fashola himself. He says, "Our understandable demands for improvement and the speed at which we seek the improvement must not blind us from what has been achieved, because these represent the foundation on which the improvement that we seek will be built upon." So I think that's a powerful message to Nigerians, not to criticize all the time, but understand, also appreciate what we have right now and encourage ourselves. Nigeria will be great again, and I'm really proud to be here. And thank you again, sir.
Thank you
for
coming.
joining us on the show.
Thank you.
Have a great weekend. We'll see you Monday. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.